we think about the word called vision, and I think about it specifically, and it reminds me of a story. I say a story, but an account of really happening of a pastor friend of the family's. A pastor worked for a church, and before he started working there, it was actually his church. He had gotten a vision from God of where he wanted to be. And he followed that vision, what he thought it was at the time. He followed it, and it led him to start up a church of his own. And it was good. It wasn't failing. It was a nice enough church, not that big for the time, but it was a nice enough church. It was profitable, but along the way, and I don't know how long it took, but along the way, he got the feeling, and he told us much. Along the way, he got the feeling that God wanted him to sell, doesn't seem like the right word, but God wanted him to donate the church, so to speak, to a bigger conglomerate of churches. So he was praying about it. He met with some leaders. He met with some leaders in the yard, and ultimately he did. He did end up donating it, and that's where we go now. When God gives you a vision, and when you're so convinced of what it is, and I can imagine how hard it must have been for him, but when God gives you a vision, and you're so convinced of what it is, and then he turns around and says, well, actually, no, this is what I meant. That can be tough. And what can be almost tough is when God gives you a vision or what you think it is at the time, and then it gets flipped around like that. That's when the devil oftentimes comes in. Because, like I said last week, the devil is a crafty serpent. He may be fine to use in battle ultimately, but he's no fool. He's a crafty serpent. He'll come in at the most opportune time when you're seemingly at your lowest, when it'll have the biggest impact, and they'll start telling you, well, you misunderstood this. I mean, and if you misunderstood this, who are you to say anything? Who are you to carry out God's will? Maybe you misunderstood other things in the past that God told you. He's a crafty serpent and an opportune serpent, like I say. And like I say, I can imagine how hard it must have been for him to ultimately donate the church, how much he wrestled. And that's okay. We're not meant to be perfect. We're meant to, I don't want to say meant to wrestle with God, but it's expected. I mean, because, like I say, we're not perfect. We don't know everything that's out there. And we certainly don't do 100% of God's will 100% of the time. Like, when you get a vision like that, it can be hard also because members of Christian faith can talk to you, and you have their voices. You have their voices chiming in, and sometimes God hasn't shown them the same vision that they've shown you. Though that can be hard as well. I've not had to deal with that myself, I don't guess, but I imagine that can be pretty hard and pretty taxing as well. But this saying, I don't know how old it is, but basically it says you can't move backwards, you can only move forward. And I get what that's saying, I do. You can't really regress. You can only move forward at that age. No matter how many body treatments you get, you can't be as young as you were. You can only move forward in time and move forward in age. You can't get a moment back. But God can take you wherever He wants to take you. Whether it be back to the beginning, whether it be 40 or bit, God can use you wherever He deems appropriate to use you. One of the biggest themes in the Bible is just going back to the beginning, back to your first year, back to Jesus Christ. Because that's ultimately what it's about. The ending of the story, Zoe donates to the church, and it's flourishing. It's a yard bigger than it was. It's part of a chain of churches now, and you can back on it in hindsight, because that's what it often is. You can back on it. That was the right decision. That was God's will to donate that church. But what I want to talk about, or what I want to focus on, is what happened afterwards. What happened afterwards, this pastor stayed on for the church a little bit as a staff member. But then he got a call to take some time off. He got a call to leave the ministry for a while. But ultimately he ended up at another church. He ended up at another church where he is the head pastor. He is the lead pastor. He gets to say the word of the Lord every Sunday, and I think Sunday night. And I know Wednesday night. They get to say the word of the Lord much more often than he was, which was his passion from the start. My point is, with this story, you will be ultimately where you want to be. It may take some time, it may take a different route than you think it should. But ultimately, if you trust God, you will be where you want to be. You will be where you need to be, yes. You'll be where you want to be. God wants to give you what you want. Ultimately, what will give you the most happiness, the most joy. Maybe He doesn't give you what you want at the moment, but ultimately, like any good father, it delights him to give good and long-lasting gifts to his children. I know it can be hard. I know it can be scary when you get a vision from God, and you just seem so close. But then God seemingly does 180 on you. And God says, no, you need to be here now. I mean, I can't tell you what it is yet, what my plan is yet, but you just need to trust me and you just need to be here. Because that's the best thing to do. No matter how scared, how fearful you are, which is a natural reaction, by the way, even for the most seasoned Christian, you never stop being worried and you never stop thinking about things. But ultimately, God has your best interest at heart. No matter where He takes you, no matter what He seemingly told you that maybe it'll be contradictory, or at least by human standards contradictory, God ultimately has your best interest at heart. God ultimately wants your heart, and God ultimately wants your obedience because He delights in giving you good and long-lasting gifts. Guys, I love you. God loves you. God is so much invested in you. He has a plan far beyond what you could ever know. Guys, I'll be praying for you. Be safe, be wise, and have a good day.